Hi all, thanks for joining me. We're looking at Mark 14, 1 through 11 today. So if you haven't read that, go ahead and cut it off, take a few minutes and read through it, and just sort of pay attention to what jumps out at you. All right, this is called the anointing at Bethany. Jesus is at Simon the leper's home, probably someone he's healed. The text doesn't really say that. But a woman comes in with an alabaster jar of perfume. An alabaster jar is like it's a sealed jar, and the only way to open it is to break it. And so once it's open, it's open. It's like sort of Pandora's box. You can't put anything back, and you can't save it for later. And so she pours it out, and there's this cry of protest that, hey, we could have sold that and gave the money to the poor. And there's a real cry out because this isn't like something you picked up at Walmart. This woman spent, or the alabaster jar was worth, literally a year's wages, a whole year. So let's figure out whatever you're making, and that's how much this could have brought. That's a lot of money probably. So they're very, very upset about the extravagance of this because we could have fed the poor, and et cetera, et cetera. And there's other versions of this. In other gospels, it says that Judas was complaining, and really he was complaining because he wanted to steal the money. But that's not what's going on here. We don't have that. It's just we could have sold it and given it to the poor. This is probably one of the more uncomfortable passages for a whole lot of people, because in this passage, Jesus essentially says, when the apostles and those sitting around there say, "Hey, we could have fed the poor," Jesus says, "Hey, there's always going to be poor. Get over it. That there's always going to be people in poverty. Get over it." That one of the realities the church doesn't seem to understand in North America is the church does not exist in any way, shape, or form to relieve suffering. Jesus did relieve suffering, but he relieved suffering on with specific people, not with everyone. He didn't heal everybody in town. He didn't go to the hospitals. They didn't have hospitals, but he didn't go to the pool of Siloam and heal everybody there. He healed one guy. He didn't make anyone wealthy. Not one person do we see him giving money to. In fact, here's one opportunity where money could have been spent, if you will, more wisely, and he says, "Hey, this is how it is." When the woman gave her 2 mites, the last 2, in fact, all that she had, Jesus said, "This was it. That was all she had." Jesus did not chase her down and say, "Well, here, let me replenish your supply." He noted her faithfulness. He noted her work of faith, and let her walk away without replenishing her purse. Now, that doesn't mean that God didn't bless her or whatever, but there's no evidence. And Jesus doesn't go on to say, people who do this, they're going to be blessed even more. It's not the TV evangelist kind of thing. So if I'm going to highlight anything here, I want you to go away wrestling with this. If the church's primary role isn't to relieve suffering, then what is the church's primary role? What is it the church is all about if we're not there to take care of the world and make everybody feel good? What's the role? And then what is the role of what we do with the poor? Because Paul does say that we're to take up alms on the first day of the month, or first day of the week, and to share with those who are poor. Although he also is very clear that the poor that he's talking about is those who are poor church members in Jerusalem. It was for a specific project. It wasn't for handing out to the poor on the streets. It's a knotty problem, like wood knots, that kind of thing. It's a difficult problem that you have to face, that we all have to face, is that sometimes the work of the church may have strayed from what Jesus intended, that nowhere does it seem to be where we're commanded or expected to relieve the suffering of people on this earth, but that there's another suffering that perhaps we are better equipped to deal with. So there you have lots of conversation. Good luck. See you next week.